Hello and welcome to the Can I Retire Now podcast with your hosts, Nick Russell and Becky Wagoner. I'm your podcast producer, RJ Malik, and I'd like to welcome Nick and Becky. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, we're doing great, RJ.
Doing great.
All
Yeah.
right. And what do you have lined up for us on this podcast?
Today, we're going to be continuing up our discussion about tracking your spending habits and kind of make sure that's all cleaned up and in a row and you know where you're going and some future steps to take after you get that complete.
Okay. So spending. Everybody
Spend.
loves to
Yeah.
spend,
It's
but
our favorite pastime as
yes,
Americans, right? It's what we do.
but keeping track is something I think a lot of us don't. So talk to us about reviewing spending habits.
Yeah. So in the last episode, we provided a tracker that Becky and I use at home, right, to track our expenses. And a lot of the last episode was really talking about the difference between tracking and budgeting. Um, so as a follow-up for that, assuming people went through and started actually tracking some of their expenses, it's then, okay, what do we do with this? The first step is self-awareness. Being aware of where your money goes is critically important. But then, you know, what do you do with that data, right? What do you do with that information? Did anything surprise you? Did anything, seem unreasonably high or low in that budget? There's a lot of people that I joke with Becky when we do ours, how many Amazon transactions we see. But realistically, when we get to the end of the month, it doesn't really total up to as much as it seems. It's a lot of little small transactions. Um, and I'll just share this as an example. When prior to living with and being married to Becky, when I was living my bachelor life, um, I would do the same exercise with my own money and eating out. So dining out was an absurd number on my budget, on my tracking of expenses. And part of that was I worked, so I did what most people did. I ate lunch out. I came home, I was tired. I ordered food or I stopped somewhere on the way home. Well before my time with Becky, I did date other women and you pay for dinner and stuff. So it just wound up being this huge number. And I've shared this with clients, this little tidbit. Our but our amount of money spent eating out now is less than what it was when I was single. And they don't, some people hear that and they go, oh, there's no way. I was like, and we're a family of three, but Becky, it's always, well, and Becky's a phenomenal cook, so this helps. But it's important for her from the beginning that we had dinner at home during the week. It was, it's a healthier option. It's a more fiscally appropriate option. And I bobble-headed and I did what most people do. Oh, okay. A woman I love. And then you start to look at the numbers and you're like, wow, we really do save a lot of money eating in. Now we do go out to eat, don't get me wrong, and we enjoy it, but it's usually reserved for a couple nights a week, right, babe? And I'm the first one to admit she sends me off to work with a packed lunch, and it's delicious. I just had mine. And it saves me, I mean, it used to be $7, $8 a day, and now it's 15 plus a day to go somewhere. By the time you either have it delivered, you tip, tax, all of that. So that was always the big line item for me. But it is different for everybody. And I don't know if that shocks you, Becky, to hear that I spent more money eating out when I was alone.
No, not at all. I know
Okay,
who you
yeah.
are.
Yeah. I also love to cook, but it just, it's not practical, or I made every excuse on, it's not
You
easy to
did.
cook for
Yeah.
one. So I'm no different than everybody else when it comes to that stuff.
Sure,
Um,
cooking for one is not fun. Cooking for other
No.
people is enjoyable. I do the
yeah.
cooking at our house, so
Yeah.
my wife is very happy with that. But when she visits her mom or I'm visiting my mom and we're not together, um, you're just grabbing whatever.
Yeah.
And that's, what you were saying, Nick, it all adds up.
And I could tell you from previous conversations Becky and I have had, we'll probably have an entire episode of this podcast dedicated to eating out, taking in food from a restaurant or cooking at home. because we've had some like really fun, interesting conversations about that. But I
But
guess yeah,
yeah,
good.
I was just going to say, so by tracking it, Nick didn't realize probably the total sum. Well, you did, but it wasn't as shocking until you actually saw an alternative
Yeah.
in place. And so having those discussions with your household and everything, and you've told your clients, like actually go home and write it down, and they're usually surprised. So tracking your spending and just getting the data in front of you, even if you don't do anything with it except know it, is still valuable because it can still impact and should impact the way you proceed forward, right? Because you want to be prepared. So an easy way, if you feel uncomfortable with some categories and stuff, what we've done in our house is like, okay, well, if we're not gonna, if we want to try to make some changes and stuff, you can figure out how much is that worth either per wear. Like if it's a clothing item, am I going to wear this 3 times? Is it worth $50 a wear or whatever? Or am I willing to exchange, so many hours of my work life for this one item? If you divide your income into hourly rates, just say, wow, am I willing to work an entire day or, 2 hours just to get this item? So that's an easy way to kind of mentally think about how you're going to spend and maybe be more aware of it instead of just swiping the debit card as we all do, or Apple Pay or whatever. It's really easy.
It's
So,
getting easier.
Yeah. And I
yes.
want to ask you, Becky, because I've actually in our house have made the opposite argument. So I'm curious how you feel. I'll put you on the spot because we have not talked about this, where like we have a lawn service, put aside that they don't go in our backyard for some reason. But I think it's worth the money we pay them as like that hourly rate of what we earn and bring in as a family. I would rather spend that money to have that time so that we can do something outside of that. It's kind of the inverse of what you were just talking about. So if you do have expendable money, I've always found that there's a spot for that, right? Where your time is more valuable than the thing, and the money
Well, yeah.
spent.
Well, and that's just a formula, right? Does this cost less than my hourly rate if I were to do it myself?
Yeah.
Right. So if you have, a housekeeper or a lawn service, you know what I mean? Just say, okay, my hourly rate is $40 an hour. I'm paying this housekeeper $30 an hour. So it's cheaper, technically, mathematically, if you want to say, to hire that out. So it's interesting when you start thinking about it in terms of your income and your time and putting it all down on paper and seeing maybe where, and I've told you this, Nick, like sometimes, yeah, it does make sense. I agree with you. The housekeeper or the lawn service makes sense if you can make more money doing your job instead of doing that. So all kinds of interesting tidbits about spending, but just seeing the data and what it brings forward is important.
Yeah. And so we've talked about this a little, Becky, about great. Now what do we do now? Right? You have the information. Maybe you've assessed it, you've looked at it, you said, okay, well, yeah, that eating out number is really high. So you figure out, wow, I'm eating lunch out every day and dinner out 5 times a week. Well, let's do dinner out 3 nights a week and I'll bring my lunch to work with me. Well, all of a sudden that immediately has money in your budget. But there are kind of 4 categories we find everybody kind of falls into once they do this assessment. And so kind of figure we'll go through some of those, might be helpful to help people identify kind of where they fall and kind of the next steps from there. So the first category is avoider. So your avoiders, their spending is not appropriate, right? Either they're spending all of their money or more than they make, and their savings not appropriate. So they don't worry or think about either, really. Those are people that are just, gunslinging. And I always use this what was real life for me, but this example of I worked when I was in college. In my senior year of college, I delivered pizzas, right? And I think that year I crushed it and made like $4,000 or $5,000. I had to file a tax return. And then somehow people graduate college, start their first job. Now, yeah, rent is usually a little higher and you have other expenses, but maybe they're making 50,000 in that example, 10 times more, but they still don't have 2 nickels to rub together. there's no way like gas and rent and stuff is absorbing all of that. But now that you have like the free will of that money, people just kind of swell to what they're making and wind up spending all of that. So obviously, avoider is kind of, well, it's the category you want to avoid. You want to be aware of what you're spending. You don't want to be spending more than what you make. You need to make sure you're prioritizing saving. Um, then we have a category we call people that mean well. That their spending is appropriate, right? So they're conscious about where they're putting money. They're maybe a little more fiscally conservative, but they're still not saving appropriately. So I find this to be the easiest category for someone to go from where they are to where they want to be, because they're spending an appropriate amount, meaning there is some excess, and maybe the excess is just going in a bank account, right? And nowadays interest rates are highest they've been in a long time. You can earn some money in a high yield savings or CD, but they're just not doing anything with that money. So they really need to find what they need to do with that money. So that really goes to more of a long-term, what are my goals? Where's the most appropriate place to put this money? The risk return of it, what investments we pick, all of that kind of stuff. But those people are really in a good starting point. And obviously, the earlier that you realize you're in this section, the bigger of an impact you can make. You start to put small bits of that away every month, let it compound over time. You'll make a really big improvement.
Yeah, but the first step, obviously, for everybody is to spend less than you make, right? So that's the number one goal. And then, once you get your savings to the next level, or to the happening period, then you're in a good spot. So for sure. So you mean well, you're doing all the right things, just not enough of them at that level. So
yeah. Next category would be, what do you say? People are scared. We'll call them the scared people.
And this is hard for me to believe, but Nick says they exist. It's the people that their savings are right on track, and they're going to be good. They have their goal retirement date. It's all going to happen, but they're actually not spending appropriately. And by appropriately in this instance, we mean not enough. Like they're sacrificing their lifestyle and their current, way of living because they're scared about the future. So they're actually, not enjoying life right now. Right. Is that how you say it, Nick?
Yeah. And I don't want to be the anti-financial advisor, but yeah, I mean, I'll use us as an example. It's the whole point of this podcast, right? Is to share. And, we don't live in a cardboard box so we can enjoy retirement later. God willing, we live long enough. I mean, God willing, we live as long as we're supposed to. But we're not going to make like sacrifices. I have met people who have not bought new sneakers for themselves, instead glued the soles back on. These are like $20 Velcro strap sneakers, and they have more money than they know what to do with. And I'm like, yeah, shoes may not be a priority to you. Like it might not be your passion, but you can drop another $20 and get a new Velcro strap pair. You don't need to like glue them together. And honestly, I do find this more in retirees than what we call like wealth accumulators like us, to where they're scared to spend down their money because they don't really have a plan to know what they can spend and at what rate and what happens if the market's down or up. Does it have an effect on me? And it's really common there. And I think that's just a failure of the advisor or their consultants really figuring that out with them, because most of what we talk about, right, is preparing for later. It's accumulation and it's saving and it's building, it's investing. And then people retire and then they're like, great, now what? and it's the same kind of concept, just almost in reverse. Now, how much can we take out instead of what we used to be able to put in? And there should be a plan for that keeps up with inflation and keeps up with healthcare costs and all of those things, which again, we could have full episodes on later. But I love my family. But when Becky and I are gone, I don't mind if the last check bounces, right? Like, man, we'll leave stuff to
What?
our
What does that
daughter.
mean?
Yeah. Oh, you've never heard that before? I've had clients say that.
So,
I've heard this from multiple people. They go, well, yeah, I don't want to leave a big inheritance to just anybody, or, maybe we have a kid, but people that don't have kids or don't necessarily, yeah, I'll leave a little bit of money in my church, but then after that, like, I don't really need to leave this to anybody, or my kids are well off. Like, they're fine without me. I don't need to leave them a
Okay,
big inheritance.
spending everything they've saved at that point too.
Correct.
And it can
Like,
happen pre-retirement though too, is what you're saying though.
yes,
Like,
yes.
okay.
There
But
are a good chunk of people that, while accumulating, just feel like, okay, I need to save, pick a number. And so they're saving that, or maybe they're saving twice that because they have excess, but they're not balancing living a life while
yeah,
still saving, right? And
okay.
so probably the easiest way to think about it is, when we do our expenses, we look at, what our income is, then what our committed expenses are, the mortgages, the rents, the insurances, tax, that kind of stuff. And then most people say, well, the rest is discretionary. The rest I can spend on whatever I want. What we're doing is we're inserting savings in there, making it basically a committed expense. And once that's done, then everything else is discretionary. And you could literally spend all of that other money. And I don't care what your pick your poison. It's eating out, it's entertainment, it's this, it's that. I'm a big sports fan, buy season tickets, something. But as long as you're saving and you're taking care of your committeds, you could spend the rest.
Okay.
But people are scared to do that.
Yeah. So where's the goal? Where do you want to be?
Oh,
what's the
well,
next step?
You want to be secure, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that you want to be in that category of you're saving an appropriate amount, you're
Yeah.
paying your bills,
Mm-hmm.
and you're enjoying life, right? That's the dream. So, it's really about just kind of prioritizing those things. So, again, looking at making sure you're aware of what your income is. I know it sounds like a weird thing, but I've started to ask clients I know what their income is, and they don't know off the top of their head. And it's okay if you're not thinking about it all the time, but even some basic conversations about what you make gross and what you actually take home as a net. But then looking at your committed expenses, and really understanding what's committed, what's discretionary. It's all in that tracker.
And what you're actually spending.
Yeah. So that you could figure out, okay, I need to save 10% of my income. You make that as a committed item, and then you let the rest be spent for your enjoyment and your happiness. And I truly believe that there should be room for both. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to save every penny we ever make and not live a happy life, not take a vacation, not go to a sporting event, not take you out to dinner. You deserve it.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah, you put it up with me.
Yeah.
So
that fourth category of being secure is what you call it, is the goal, right? So if you're in any other category, the objective is to kind of move towards being secure in your savings and future and current spending habits. So
yeah. And we keep kind of using the same language, but it is true. It's just being about self-aware about what you're spending, self-aware about what you're saving. If you have trouble figuring out, am I saving enough? Talk to somebody, like talk to a financial advisor. The calculators and stuff that I see online aren't always the best there, but talk to someone, figure it out. If you're saving enough and your spending's in control, hey, then you're in that secure box, and that's a really good place to be.
All right. So, well, I have a did you know, Nick?
Oh, I love your
Yes.
did you knows.
And RJ, get excited. Okay. According to a 2023 survey, because we love surveys, more than 2 in 5 Americans, so 42% of Americans, say they treat themselves at least monthly to something. And 21% of Americans indulge and spend weekly on something that is a non-essential spending. So,
what would that be as an example?
Oh, everyone's like, I really had a rough day at work. I'm going to stop and get ice cream on the drive home, or
But you
like,
love ice cream.
yeah, but I guess food's a
Yeah.
bad example because everyone can justify like having food, but um, just non-essential spending, something like extra pair of shoes or something that you didn't
Yeah.
plan on spending or that's outside of your budget. So,
Uh,
um,
I have an example.
oh
I
yeah.
I
was gonna say.
Yes, I just bought a music lesson or music theory course for
Ah,
myself.
Oh, that's
So
super
okay.
fun.
it's fun, but is it necessary? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And
Well,
hard. Yeah.
I would
and
argue if that's something that you're passionate about, it probably is scores even better than somebody that's just like, hey, I'm going to go on a shopping spree. I want a new pair of pants or I need new shoes just because
but
yeah,
I still have to walk a fine line because I
yeah,
do, that's something, yes, I like and I enjoy doing and hopefully eventually incorporate into what I do for a living. But I also like to buy little programs that also
Mm-hmm.
help my work. Not
yeah,
necessarily needed,
Yeah.
but they're fun and
yeah.
they're, things that I like to just work with so I guess I can look back and say, you know what? I didn't need to spend several $100s on all those programs over the last year.
But you treated yourself,
Yes, I
RJ.
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nick and I
Yes.
would put that in if we were categorizing that on our expense spreadsheet. We actually categorize all those things as entertainment.
Okay.
Because we find it's not, most people think like movies or shows or whatever is entertainment. Um, and that's like where we put Netflix and everything too. But anything we do that is entertainment for ourselves, because that's an easy category to look at if you're having, some budget, you want to make some changes and can be like, okay, what's really most important to me in this category? Parsing out the personal spending obviously is somewhere to go to, but you enjoy it, so put it in your entertainment budget, and
Okay.
if it
There it
works,
is.
keep doing it, and if it doesn't, then you can maybe look and say like maybe just once a year I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Because actually Gen Z, the other thing about this is Gen Z is most triggered by boredom. People are spending money because they're bored, and we all know how easy it is to click around on the internet and just say, oh well, I'll just, how much does it take to get free shipping, and go. So 40% of Americans are basically treating themselves, and where that previously wasn't a thing, but now is socially normal. It
Yeah.
may be an area in your expenses that you may need to look at. Maybe you already are treating yourself and it's you've spent enough. So,
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes you do that once and then it's kind of that immediate gratification. And then a
mhm.
week goes by and you're like, man, I had a rough week. I'm going to treat myself. I had a rough couple of days. I'm going to treat myself. And then all of a sudden, the only way that you realize that's the case is by then tracking expenses and coming back. And then I'll use you as an example, RJ. And then you say, okay, did I get the value out of these things that I spent the money on? The things that this is a kind of a consistent thing with people that have weight issues. They get bored, they eat, and then but you can kind of go back and say, okay, was this did I get the result I wanted?
Was
The
the juice
happiness
worth the squeeze is
was
the
the there.
phrase.
There you go, babe.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's but again, going back, if we can get everybody to that secure category of where they're saving appropriately, spending appropriately, you have that excess money in your budget, have at it. I don't care if it's a music program, night out with the family, yeah,
Video
enjoy your
games,
life.
Nick.
Video games. I am in that generation that grew up with Nintendo. I can't give it up. And now we have a 14-year-old who wants to play with me. So that's beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
for now, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
High school's coming, and so I may get left out.
Yeah.
Um,
You can keep it going. So, but the important thing is, and everyone's homework is to keep tracking your spending and just make that a daily habit. And so I have a quote here from the author of Atomic Habits, which is a great book to read. But it says, new goals don't deliver new results, new lifestyles do. And a lifestyle is not an outcome, it's a process. So for this reason, all of your energy should go into building better rituals, not chasing better results. And so this kind of ties into making tracking your expenses a monthly habit, a monthly ritual, because doing it once doesn't change anything. It's keeping it up and changing your lifestyle that can actually yield the future that you want and hopefully the retirement that you want.
Yeah. I think that's beautifully said, Becky, because it's true.
Mhm.
The earlier you know it, the earlier you can pivot, the easier it is to save for those other goals, to make those adjustments. And we haven't talked about this, but those like uh-ohs that happen in life, something happens, air conditioner breaks, someone loses their job. If you can get some of this functional stuff out of the way,
And
you're going to
habit forming.
it's going to be
Mhm.
so much better for you if or when, any of those unfortunates happen. You'll be in a much better, much more good habits, really, to have good habits.
Secure
And
place.
yeah, secure. I was trying not to use the word secure again.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, another secure place to be. So yeah. So that hopefully everybody's done the exercise and will continue to do that. I have found it to be valuable as we've done it over the years, but I will admit that it took until basically the end of the first year. So we did it every month for the first few months, and we got kind of the hang of it and did it for the quarters. And we got to the end of the year and we were able to look over the course of the whole year, average out the months and really understand, how the year went financially, but also how it went from an enjoyment, a utility standpoint of what do we feel like we shorted ourselves or anything? And it was really a great, well, obviously a great experience. We're talking about it now, and we continue to do it for what, almost 5 years? 5 years now, babe. You and
Yep.
me, huh? All right. So yeah, that's kind of it for the episode. We'll make sure that I would love to put the Atomic Habits information. We'll put that in the show notes
Mhm.
to make sure people have access to that. It's a great book. But
James
yeah,
Clear. Is that
yeah,
That's yeah.
yep,
James
yeah.
Clear.
I've got it gathering dust on a nightstand next to me. But
But
Well,
it's
you're
now
close by. You're
you
almost
yeah,
there.
yes, you've influenced me to open it up tonight. So
there we go.
or this
Excellent.
weekend. All right. How can people contact you, or where can they find you?
Oh yeah, best way to contact us is directly through the website. There's some content reaching out forms there. So that is sunrisewealthadvisors.com, Sunrise Wealth Advisors. We're also on literally every social media site. So you can find us on, I was about to say Twitter. I think that's just going to get everybody forever on X, and I'm on LinkedIn, and you could find us everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Excellent.